What is going on, everyone, and welcome to r/EntitledParents. Now, if you've ever said anything bad about your parents online, the last thing I imagine you'd want to do is for them to find it. But that is exactly what happens in today's first story when a Reddit user's dad finds their Reddit post about him. It's amazing. Let's get into it. Entitled Father finds out about my posts. Hello again. So I made a bunch of posts here about my father. I am a 29-year-old Vietnamese-born Canadian woman, and yeah, here's something that just happened. Now guys, if you don't know about this user, I've covered a number of their stories over the past week or so. You can find a couple behind the I button right now. So, my mother knew about me posting on here, and she let my sister know about the posts with a little hint to mention it to my father. So let's just say it went as well as expected. I was able to actually speak to my father for the first time in 7 years. He called my sister and demanded to speak to me. Little does he know, I take no rubbish from anyone anymore. He started off yelling at me, saying the West has corrupted me, that I'm no better than a prostitute, that I deserve to die in the gutter covered in rats. Of course though, I had a lot to say to him. I went on a 5-minute rant calling him a petty misogynist whose actions are going to leave him bitter, alone, rotting in a nursing home. No one's going to visit you on your deathbed. I have never heard my father stutter and not have words, but honestly, it felt great. So those of you that keep up with my daily videos will know this user from previous stories you might have seen on my channel, such as the one where her dad doesn't let her go to school, or the one where her dad tries to force her into an arranged marriage. So this is an amazing story to see it go full circle. He found out about the Reddit post. I mean, I can't think of much worse than that. If you are slating your dad on the internet to the public, you know, as this person OP has been doing, the last thing you're going to want is him finding out about it. But it's been 7 years since she talked to him before, and you know, she's grown up now and she knows how to, you know, defend herself, which is amazing to see. This dad was probably shocked, and then shocked again when he spoke to her and was like, oh my god, this person doesn't just you know, lie down like she did 7 years ago. She's actually standing up for herself, and I have nothing to defend myself with. Now guys, before we move on to our next story, I've firstly got to tell you about the kind sponsor of today's video, Dashlane. Dashlane is the easiest way to keep yourself safe and secure online. With quarantine, social distancing, and isolation still happening all over the world, we are using the internet more than ever right now. And Dashlane offers you an easy way to stay safe at all times online. Their VPN service can keep you safe at the push of a button, keeping you secure. And it also allows you to choose any country you would like to virtually be in, so you can access content from across the world which would otherwise be blocked on sites like Netflix. Dashlane also offers a safe, simple, and affordable way to store and fill your password information. Their autofill makes logging into any website incredibly safe and easy. Just click once to log in and Dashlane will do the rest, even creating a secure password that you will never have to remember if you like. To put it simply, Dashlane works on everything, everywhere. Also, Dashlane lets you check out in just 2 steps, which is great for getting your holiday shopping done quickly. So, download Dashlane on your first device for free today by going to www.dashlane.com/Redditor. Then, if you want to upgrade to premium to use Dashlane across all your devices, use my promo code Redditor for a discount. So guys, if that sounds like something you might enjoy, then head to the link on screen right now, or you can find it in the description and the pinned comments. Those of you that have been around on my channel for a long time now will know just how much Dashlane have supported me for way over a year at this point. So yeah, let's reciprocate that love by clicking the link in the description and supporting them. Now, let's get into the next story. Now moving on to our second story, sister-in-law steals my niece's Christmas gift for charity. I have a 7-year-old niece who wants to be a police officer like her dad when she grows up, and loves the colour pink. The more sickly sweet pink, the better. She's a sweet kid that doesn't ask for much. I like to knit and crochet during the year. Then I give the scarves and hats that I make to my aunt's church, who organises Christmas parties for really low-income families. I'm talking about people with children who can barely afford a coat. Now this party is filled with games and activities for the children. It's amazing since the church is very active in the community and has managed to get sponsors from big supermarkets who offer whole turkeys and lots of food for the parents, on top of top quality gifts for the children. I love helping my aunt during this time by giving my time and knitting stuff for those less fortunate. My brother recently started dating this girl, and to be kind and honest, I don't like her. She has trouble understanding personal space, privacy of others, and boundaries. She will insist that you tell her all about private affairs that you don't want to talk about and will make it her business. She has been constantly trying to get me to date her friends that I'm not interested in. At one point, she thought I was a lesbian because I didn't like any of the guys she wanted to set me up with. When my aunt talked about the church's plan to still offer help during Christmas, despite COVID, I told her that I had a lot of scarves and hats to give at home. My aunt was delighted and asked me to bring them to her as soon as possible. I agreed. However, the day I wanted to bring them to her, I was called to come into the office to replace a colleague. My work is in reduced workload. So I asked my sister-in-law if she could pick up the bag with the scarves and hats that was sitting at the top of my stairs, not in my living room. As I said, my niece loves the colour pink, and she asked me to make her a neon hot pink hat and scarf with a white heart. I agreed and had just finished them both and left them in a drawer in my living room. I was planning on wrapping them up and giving it to my sister later on. Fast forward to this evening. I come home exhausted. It's been a while since I've done the work and there was a lot to do. I noticed my sister-in-law had come by and taken the bag. Oh great, I thought. It reminded me of my niece's gifts. However, when I came to get them, they were gone. I checked everywhere for them, thinking I had misplaced them. Then it hit me. Maybe I had put them with the bag by mistake. I immediately called my aunt, but she couldn't find them. There was no neon hot pink scarf or hat with a white heart. I call my sister-in-law in a panic. She picks up and tells me that she had seen the scarf and hats. Oh, thank God, right? Nope. It turns out that dear female dog-in-law decided that I hadn't given enough for charity, so she decided to snoop around my house to find some more. She took 4 other scarves and hats that were for other people, my niece's gift, and decided to rearrange my drawers because they were not clean and organized. I put my anger on the back burner for a while, because my niece's gift was more important for now. When I asked her what happened to it, she responded that she had taken it and gave it to her niece because her sister was in need. To say that I was offended and annoyed is like saying that fire burns. I proceed to lose everything with her. How dare she? She goes through my stuff, takes my belongings, gives away my gift for my niece, and then has the gall to give me a lecture on how I should be happy that I helped a spoiled brat who has 2 parents making in the 7 figures a year. I told her that if the scarf and hat weren't in my possession by tomorrow night, I was going to sue her. She scoffed and hung up. I called everyone in my family, especially my brother. 20 minutes ago, my sister-in-law brought me the scarf and hat back and apologized. She was in tears and begging me not to involve my cop of a brother-in-law. My brother-in-law, bless his heart, had swung by her house and had threatened to have her arrested for thievery. I just took my stuff back, thanked her for doing the right thing, and closed the door on her. I was so angry that I was numb inside. My niece will have her gifts. My aunt has the knitted stuff I made for her church, and my brother is now single. What a day. Well, you know what, guys? I actually think the last line of that story is the best part of the whole post because, you know, often we see entitled women or entitled parents in general, and then their partner is kind of like submissive to what they're doing. They know they're being entitled, but they're just like, oh, you know what? I've been married to this thing for too long. I don't really care anymore. And they're just like, well, just do what you want, mate. But in this situation, good on your brother for, you know, listening to you and seeing what his girlfriend at the time was doing and being like, you know what? I don't really want to be around that anymore. I'm going to ditch you and move on to better things. So yeah, good on him. Now moving on to our next story. Entitled neighbor thinks he can cut down trees and other greenery on our property. My family and I have issues with this neighbor of ours that have been going on for years. When he initially moved in, my parents tried to have a good relationship with him, like helping him out with gardening and letting him get acquainted with the area. Once, during fall, my dad was using a leaf blower / mulcher hybrid on the front yard to get rid of the leaves. The neighbour spotted him and asked if he could borrow the tool, to which my dad said, sure. Now, shortly after, the neighbour left with his entire family via car to go somewhere and only came back hours after my dad had finished using the machine. My dad headed back inside the house after he was done, knowing they left, and obviously he didn't want to wait outside for them to come back. Hours later, there was a knock on the door, and my dad opened it to see the neighbour on the other side, fuming. He ranted at my dad about how it was rude of my dad that he did not wait outside to hand in the leaf blower mulcher the moment he came back, that my dad should have just stayed outside the entire time and waited for him. My dad, with his won't take any rubbish from anyone personality, just told the neighbour that he wasn't going to stand outside for an unknown period of time just to hand over the equipment. He also stated that he had fully planned to give the neighbour the equipment if the neighbour had asked, but now he wasn't going to anymore due to how rude and entitled the neighbour was. This was the first incident of many. I can't fully recall the other incidents, but I know that tensions between my family and the neighbour only grew. On to the big story now. For context, my house is located in a very awkward spot. The neighbourhood road, if you can call a few houses a neighbourhood, was this small strip of road branched off from the main road, and our houses faced this road, making it perpendicular to the main road. On the other side of the road from our house is this patch of forest that contained a couple of very tall pine trees, some shrubs, and other greenery. The shrubs and greenery were short, and the trees, though most were in the front of our house, were spread out, so we can easily see the houses on the other side of the patch. On the other side of the forest is the neighbour's house. Now his house directly faced the road and was perpendicular to it, making his fence up against the forest patch. The forest patch created a 6-foot barrier between the neighbour's fence and the neighbourhood road. During the 2018 New Year, my family and I went on vacation and left the house for about a week. When we came back, we realised all but 3 pine trees were cut down, and 2 of the surviving trees were stripped of their branches. Large patches of the greenery and shrubs were missing, and now there was an entire hole/path that leads right from the neighbourhood road to the neighbour's house. We suspected it was our neighbour, as he's had a tree cutting streak. He actually chopped off all the trees at his property shortly after moving in, including a small ironwood tree. The next day, bright and early, we see a crew of people with trucks and a wood chipper on the neighbourhood road in front of our house. My parents immediately went out and asked the crew what they were doing. According to them, they were hired by our neighbour to clear out the entire forest patch. My parents now headed over to the neighbour's house, which was more accessible now that there's literally a pathway through the forest patch to his house, and knocked on his door. When he answered, my parents asked why he hired a crew to clear out the forest patch. He responded that he was clearing it out so that he would have more land to sell to a development company. My parents asked why they were cutting into the forest patch without asking them, as each house owned parts of the forest patch, the portion in the front of our house, and the crew was very much working into our part. He responded that he went to every house and asked for permission. All our other neighbours didn't care about the forest patch and said yes. When he came to our house, there was no answer, as we were still on vacation at the time. The neighbour took the lack of an answer as a yes and got started clearing the patch. My parents told him he had no right to be clearing out their portion of the patch without their permission, specifically the trees that were cut down, as the majority of the trees were in front of our house. He responded that the trees were within his property line and he did nothing illegal. As stated before, the forest patch puts a 6-foot barrier between his fence and the neighbourhood road. The 3 feet on his side was his property, while the 3 feet on our side would be ours. My parents then asked who he hired to evaluate the property line, as the trees looked very much to be on our side. And with a smug smile, he responded that he did it himself. My parents informed him that he needed an official from the county to verify the property lines. Again though, with a smug look, he said that he's in the right and just closed the door. The crew hired by our neighbour assured us that they would not be doing any work on the forest patch until the situation has been sorted out. My parents immediately called over someone from the county to come look at the property lines, and when they did, it showed that lots of greenery on our property was removed, and all but one of the trees cut down had been on our property. Over the next few days, the crew would come back in the morning, but would always knock on our door and inform us they wouldn't be working anywhere near our patch. The neighbour finally came to our door a few days after the previous meeting with a morose look on his face and wanted to talk it out of my dad, reaching a compromise. It would seem that the neighbor finally got someone official to look things over and realized their grave mistake. My dad demanded that the trees he cut down be replaced, not with saplings, but actual trees. He allowed the 2 trees with no branches to be cut down, as they would stick out like a sore thumb. The 2 trees were eventually cut down. I watched as they cut them down section by section and remembered the thumps they made when the sections hit the ground from being dropped. Now it's only the lone tree that's left in the forest patch. Did the neighbor keep his promise? Nope. To this day, he still has not replaced the trees. My parents aren't the kind to go sue for money or retribution nilly-willy, and they didn't want to go through the stress of a lawsuit. So things just stayed tense on both sides while we just ignored the neighbor and he avoided us. The forest patch used to be home to 2 owls I would hear throughout the night hooting. I missed them a lot, and there were never rats and rabbits around when they were there. Now, why am I posting this story now? Well, because the neighbor struck again this week. My room is right on top of the garage, and I can easily see the neighborhood road and the forest patch. I woke up to the sound of trucks and loud chatter on Monday, and when I looked out, I saw a crew of people with trucks, chainsaws, and a wood chipper. I immediately got my parents' attention, and my dad again headed out to see what was going on. This crew was hired by our neighbor to do some work on the forest patch. Most of the work planned was to be done on the neighbor's property, but apparently some of it was to be done on ours too. My dad informed them of what the neighbor did before and that they weren't allowed to work on our property, though he did give them his permission to cut down this scraggly bush that didn't look good. The crew understood and did their work on our neighbor's property, but left ours completely alone. Last night, I was upstairs playing some Genshin Impact. Yes, I know, I'm a weeb, when I heard yelling downstairs. I faintly heard my mum saying, "We don't want to fight with you." I left the room I was in to hear my parents having an argument with my neighbor. I hear him screaming how we're causing him issues and costing him money. I guess he paid full up front and couldn't get a partial refund for the work on our property that my dad prevented. I didn't hear the whole conversation, so what I'm typing next is what I heard from my parents. He apparently was stomping his foot like a child and just kept screaming my parents were being buttholes who kept interfering. My parents kept telling him that he didn't have an easement onto our property and he wasn't allowed to modify it as he pleased. He screams that he didn't know what an easement was and that it doesn't matter. He should be allowed to make changes so he can sell the land to a development company. My parents just ended the conversation by repeatedly telling him to get legal advice or a lawyer before shutting the door in his face. I've been worried that this guy will do something crazy sometime, and I've been considering getting a security camera. My parents have been telling me I'm just being paranoid, but honestly, if the political climate nowadays says anything, it's that people are unpredictable. I have been given permission by my parents that if he ever comes onto my property again and won't leave, to hose the mofo. Sorry for the long story, I'll let you guys know of any updates. Wow, yeah, what a story. By hose, I assume you mean literally like watering hose, not hose and shoot. I don't know, maybe some terminology that I'm, not too acquainted with. But anyway, pretty amazing story. I just don't understand this guy at all. What is he doing? You can do whatever you want to your property if you want to sell it on, as long as it's, within the law and within the council's permission. But you can't then go onto someone else's property and be like, you know what? I don't like your trees, and I actually want to make a path through to my house so its property value goes up so I can sell it on. So I'm going to take your entire patch of forest down. Like, what sort of thinking is that? Obviously, you can't do that. You need to be suing this guy, right? You need to get the law involved, because otherwise, as you've seen, he makes false promises that he's not going to keep. So you need to actually, put some sort of criminal thing on him so he actually listens for once. I mean, what is he doing? What is he doing? That can't be legal what he's doing. It's just mental. Please go and get some actual legal help so you can deal with this guy properly. Anyway, guys, that is going to do it for this episode of Entitled Parents. Once again, a massive thank you to Dashlane for sponsoring this video. If you want to go and check it out, guys, which I strongly recommend you do, I use it literally every day seamlessly. The link is in the description and the pinned comment. Click it. It's free. If you want to install it on multiple devices, it's very cheap as well. So, go ahead, do it. If you want more from me, video here, and subscribe to my channel for daily Reddit content. With that being said, I'll see you tomorrow with a brand new upload.